Good day, my fellow hunters of the guild. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and to the regulars, nice to see you again. I am Blitz, and together we're about to delve into the Monster Hunter files. But before we do, if I could ask you to like, comment and subscribe. Without any more delay, let's do it. Today, we're going to have a look at making some non-elemental offensive builds. In order to do this, first of all we'll have a look at the attack boost skill, then we'll have a look at the critical eye skill, and then we'll see which one works out better. Just a few things to note before we get started today. The first thing is that the latest monster that was available is the Coral Pookie. This means that if any monsters came out after this that have any of the skills mentioned or listed in any of the information today, they aren't included in this obviously because they didn't exist then. Next thing to bear in mind is that when we're looking at these skills today, we're assuming that they're going to be at max level. That means both critical eye and attack boost are both going to be at level 5. We're able to hit this level 5 cap in 3 pieces of equipment, which gives you 2 slots open to add any other armour you want in, allowing you to customise your build a little bit more by giving yourself your own unique skills. We're also going to try and reduce the amount of times that you're going to be farming the same monster to kind of take advantage of material efficiency, so you're not looking to farm Rathalos over and over again to make 2 pieces of Rathalos gear, for example. And finally, I'll be creating a text version of this guide with a bit more information, including the earlier levels of critical eye and attack boost stats. I'll add the link to that in the description below, so give that a check out if you want a bit more information. So the first skill that we're going to look at today is the attack boost skill. It's a pretty simple skill to understand. All it does is just add a flat number of attack, in this case 120 attack, onto your damage. There's 4 different pieces of gear that we can get the attack boost skill from. The first one is the leather mail. With this one you get attack boost 1. The next one is the Rathalos helm. This one's a little better, with an attack boost 2. Third one is the Rathalos van braces, which this one gives you an attack boost 1. And finally, the Bamboo coil gives you an attack boost 2 also. So, with this gear, our aim is to reach level 5 for attack boost. It can be done with 3 pieces of gear. So first of all, we'll be using the Rathalos helm for the attack boost 2, and we'll be using the Bamboo coil also with the attack boost 2. Now, in order to gain our final point, we have the leather mail and the Rathalos van braces. Both of these come with attack boost 1, and also come with a fire resistance 1, so skill wise, they function exactly the same. Now I would recommend that you use the leather mail, simply because you're already building the Rathalos helm, which would mean that you need extra materials for Rathalos to build both the van braces and the helm. So, looking at what we've got as our final build, what we're going to have is the leather mail, which gives you attack boost 1 and fire resistance 1, the Rathalos helm, which gives you attack boost 2 and fire attack 1, and finally the Bamboo coil, which gives you attack boost 2 and the firm foothold 1. So overall, we're going to have attack boost 5, fire resistance 1, fire attack 1, and firm foothold 1. So attack boost is nice and simple, literally 120 attack at level 5, which we've built there with those 3 pieces of equipment, with a few extra skills in there. So critical eye works quite different to attack boost. It still is focused on increasing your damage output, but instead of increasing it in a flat rate the way attack boost does, what it does instead is it increases your chance of landing a critical hit on the enemy. So before we talk about critical eye, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you into the loop with Infinity, explain how that works a little bit to you, and then we'll move on to critical eye after that. With affinity, you can either have a positive affinity or you can have a negative affinity. A positive affinity is great. It increases your chance of dealing that critical hit to the monster, while a negative one, that's not so good. I like to think of it a blunder, so instead of dealing the extra damage, you're going to deal less damage, which we don't want at all. Now when it comes to the damage modifier, what you're going to get is you're going to get 25%. So that means if you're hitting them harder, you're going to be hitting them for an extra 25% damage. But if you're not, if you're hitting them weaker, you're going to be hitting 25% less damage. So basically, if you're hitting with a positive affinity, you're going to be dealing an extra 25% damage. If you're hitting with a negative affinity, you're going to be losing 25% of your damage. So what we want to try and do is we want to try and avoid that negative affinity, and we'll have a look how we can do that by using our critical eye skill. So what critical eye does is that it increases that infinity rate for you. When you're looking at it at max level at level 5, you're looking at a 40% increase, which is great. That's brilliant. I'm a dual blade player, and honestly, Devil Jaw dual blades look cool. I like the attack stat on them, but they've got a negative 30 affinity. So with a critical eye build, maxing that out level 40, that'll then put my affinity at 10%, which means that I'll now be hitting crits instead of hitting blunders. So when it comes to the equipment that comes with the critical eye, we have 8 different pieces this time. So first of all, we've got 3 different pieces that have level 2, and we have 5 different pieces that have level 1. Now with this, it means that we're more flexible with our builds. So for example, if we wanted, we could have the windproof skill, or we could sub that out for a different piece of gear that comes with ice resistance. So when I go through this equipment, I'm going to go through the equipment with critical eye level 2 first of all. So we've got the cooler greaves, with the critical eye level 2 on its own. We also have the Wrath Heart coil, which comes with the critical eye level 2 on its own. Then finally, we have the Odogoron Mill, which comes with a critical eye level 2, but this one also comes with bleeding resistance level 1. So straight away, we're going to have a look at getting level 4 out of these 3 pieces of gear. So first of all, I'll recommend the Kulu Greaves. The reason why I'm recommending this one is because the Kulu is a nice easy monster to hunt. It's quite common, easy enough choice. The next piece of equipment that I'm going to recommend is the Odogoron Mill. Now first of all, the bleeding resistance is an extra kill, which is nice, but unless you're hunting Odogoron, it doesn't really come into the equation. The reason why I'm picking Odogoron is because I don't want to pick the Wrath Heart. The reason why I don't want to pick the Wrath Heart piece of gear is because Wrath Heart comes from the Pink Rathian. Now, Pink Rathian is much more difficult to fight. It's also more difficult to find as well. You tend to find them during events when the Pink Rathian appears more often. You might also find them in hunt-a-thons as well, but if it's not an event, you'll normally find that they're the top tier monster in the hunt-a-thon. So for simplicity's sake, make it nice and easy to get this gear to start with. We're going to go with the Kulu Greaves and the Odogoron Mill. So now we need to be hitting that final level by getting 1 more point for another piece of equipment. So in this situation, we've got the leather headgear. So the leather headgear comes with critical eye 1 and ice resistance 1. We also have the Kulu headpiece, which comes with a lock-on skill and also comes with a critical eye level 1. Next, we have the Wrath Heart braces. With this, it comes with windproof level 1 and also critical eye level 1. And then the final choice that we have is the Odogoron coil, which comes with critical eye level 1 and the evasive concentration skill. Now, when it comes to picking that last piece of equipment, for me, it's got to be the Kulu headpiece, just simply because of that lock-on skill that it comes with. Now, by using lock-on, you can target a monster's part, which lets you hit the weak points, or if you need to break a certain part, for example, a tail, you can lock on the tail, chop off the tail, get the extra drop. To me, it's a no-brainer. Now, I know I said at the start of the video that we are going to try and avoid using the same pieces of gear from the same monster to avoid that repetition of farming, and it allows you to spread out your cost through your materials. But for me, no, it's just a no-brainer. Picking that lock-on skill is just too good to avoid. However, if we're going with the idea of not having a piece of equipment from the same set as another one, then what I would recommend is the leather headgear. So with the leather headgear, you're going to get your ice resistance. So there are some ice monsters out there, especially when it comes to winter time. We had Barrioth, which was great, but we still got Legiana. Now, Legiana spawns at a 4-star at its lowest anyway, so it's always nice to have that extra resistance against its attacks. So if you're going with my first recommendation of taking the Kulu headpiece, what you're going to have is the Kulu headpiece. You're also going to have the Kulu Greaves and the Odogoron Mill. So with that, your skills that you're going to have lock-on at max, because that's only got 1 level with it. You're going to have critical eye at level 5, and finally you'll have bleeding resistance at level 1 as well. However, if you decide to go for my second recommendation instead, what you'll have is the leather headgear instead, but you'll still have the Kulu Greaves and the Odogoron Mill, which again, it'll give you the full level 5 of the critical eye. It'll give you that 1 bleeding resistance, but instead of the lock-on skill, this time you'll have the ice resistance skill level 1. So we now have an understanding of how both these skills work. We also have a build to go with, which I've explained the extra skills that it comes with. I'm not going into detail with those because I will be creating a video where I do go into what each skill does and how they work. But it's also worth noting as well that I've only used 3 pieces of equipment in those builds, which allows you 2 slots. In those 2 slots, you can put whatever you want. You can add defense boosts, you can add HP boosts, you can add elemental attacks, add whatever you want to make the builds a bit more of your own. But now what we need to do, now that we understand all this, we need to compare them both. Now this is where things start to get a little bit more complicated. So like I said, with critical eye, what that does, it increases your chance of affinity. Infinity, when you get your critical hit, deals 25% extra damage. With this, we've got to kind of find the sweet spot to see where this 25% damage starts becoming more effective and where it works out that your critical eye build will be better. So in order to find the point where critical eye becomes more effective and becomes the better attack build for you, what you need to be looking at is the weapon damage on the weapon. No attack booster or anything like that. Literally, have a look at your weapon, have a look what the attack damage is on there, and those are the figures that we're going to be using. Just that weapon damage. So we also ignore the elemental damage when we look at the weapon type. So for this, I'm literally using non-elemental weapons. If you want, you can have a look at using an elemental weapon, but you don't want to be adding the elemental attack on there. I'll be doing a separate video explaining elemental attack and how that works, but for the moment, we'll just ignore that. Like I said, it's a lot easier to look at it just using a non-elemental weapon. For example, use a Paolu weapon or use a Barrioth weapon. Just something non-elemental. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to find that golden number where the critical eye damage takes over the attack boost damage. So attack boost at level 5 will give you 120 extra damage. So what we're looking for is a number where we get more than that 120. And I have that number here. I've also got the point where they work out equal. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at those and we'll go through the calculation. It's quite a simple calculation. You can do it in about 30 seconds on a calculator, if that, for them both. So, looking at weapon damage, the first number I'm going to point out is 483. So, 483 weapon damage is the point where the boost from attack boost and the damage that you gain from the critical eye affinity hit equal to each other and both become effective. So at that point it wouldn't really matter which build you're using. So what we're going to do is, just to prove that this is the right number, so we'll take 483 and we times it by 1.23. Now if you do that, you'll come out with 603 point something 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 something. Now what I've done in these calculations, because I'm not 100% sure how those points of a number will calculate into damage, whether it'll round them up if it goes above 0.5 or whether it'll just round them down or what, I'm not sure on the rounding. So just to be safe and to be more accurate, what I've done is I've rounded all the numbers down. So what I've done is 483 times 1.25 equals 603. 603 is 120 higher than 483. So that, my friends, is the point where both builds are just as effective as each other. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure how the decimal point numbers work in Monster Hunter. I don't know where the rounding is, so for simplicity's sake and to basically guarantee that you will be dealing more damage, I've rounded it down. So the magic number that you're looking for is 485. So if you have 485 weapon damage, a critical eye hit will deal more damage than an attack boosted hit. So 4.85 times 1.25 equals 606. And of course, 485 plus 120 is 605. So we got it. 485. 485 is the number where a critical eye, critical hit build takes over on damage compared to the attack boost build. And is that where we switch builds? If you want to, that's where you can switch it, because your critical hits are going to deal more damage than an attack boost hit. But the thing that you need to remember is that affinity from a critical eye build alone will only give you 40%. Now some weapons will give you that extra 5-10%, some weapons will take it off. Now that means that your overall damage output for the hunt is going to be lower with a critical eye build than it is with a weapon boost build. So does this mean that affinity builds and critical eye builds are worse than raw attack and attack boost builds? Looking at the low figures of the point where it becomes more effective, yes, because you are looking at the point where a single hit will do more damage. You're not looking at the long run of the hunt. As we look higher damage output of weapons, when your weapon damage gets higher, that means that your critical hits are going to get higher. That means that number is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But not only that, we also have other skills we can look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here. This is all we're going to talk about for today. And next time, we will be looking at other skills that we can use. We'll be looking at critical eye, we'll be looking at burst, we'll be looking at a few different skills. I'm probably going to carry on the affinity first of all. We'll have a look at building that affinity build so we can get more damage out with those affinity hits. So, does this mean that affinity builds and critical eye builds are worse than raw attack and attack boost builds? Looking at the low figures of the point where it becomes more effective, yes, because you are looking at the point where a single hit will do more damage. You're not looking at the long run of the hunt. As we look higher damage output of weapons, when your weapon damage gets higher, that means that your critical hits are going to get higher. That means that number is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But not only that, we also have other skills we can look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here. This is all we're going to talk about for today. And next time, we will be looking at other skills that we can use. We'll be looking at critical eye, we'll be looking at burst, we'll be looking at a few different skills. I'm probably going to carry on the affinity first of all. We'll have a look at building that affinity build so we can get more damage out with those affinity hits. Just because we're going for an attack boost build or we're going for a critical eye build, it doesn't mean you can't mix those together. So, as you remember, in those builds, what I've done is I've given you 3 pieces of gear, and then that leaves you 2 open slots. In those open slots, if you're using a critical build, add attack boost into them. If you're using an attack boost build, stick in critical eye. You don't have to stick to just a single build. I've aimed at maximising the skill so we can kind of see how effective it can be. But feel free to mix and match the skills. If you want to have 2 levels of critical eye and 2 levels of attack boost, go for it. It's completely up to you. That is the genius of Monster Hunter. You get to play with your skills, you get to play with your build, you get to have loads and loads of fun of seeing what you can come up with. And honestly, I find it one of the most fun games to play. Alright guys, that's everything for today. On behalf of the Monster Hunter Files, I'm Blitz. Thanks very much for joining us, and if you can, leave a like, a comment and subscribe.